Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're stripping everything back. We are looking at a concept that I think most of us treat as a luxury or maybe an aesthetic goal, but biology actually treats as an absolute necessity.
Right.
We're talking about vitality. And I want to be clear right off the bat that we are not talking about wellness in the the Instagram sense.
Yeah, no $20 green smoothings here.
Exactly. We aren't talking about expensive spa treatments that promise to align your chakras or anything like that. We are talking about the hardware and the software of the human body.
Right, we're talking about that raw, optimized state where the human animal is actually functioning the way it was designed to function. It is about capacity. It's about those foundational levers that dictate whether you feel like you're dragging yourself through the day or actually powering through it.
And looking at the massive stack of research we pulled for this deep dive, I mean, we have everything from metabolic studies in JAMA to protocols on subconscious rewiring, and there is just this massive disconnect between what the science says actually works and what the marketing machine sells us.
Oh, completely. We tend to think health requires complexity. We think it needs a 6-day-a-week gym split or some complex supplement stack or a diet that requires a chemistry degree just to get through the grocery store.
Yeah, that complexity is actually the enemy. When you look at the sources we've brought together today, people like Michael Easter on movement, Vanessa Spina on nutrition, Tice Gibson on psychology, the common thread across all of them is simplicity.
It really is. It's about returning to a baseline that modern life has just sort of stripped away from us.
The phrase that kept jumping out at me while reading this was minimum effective dose.
Precisely. The smallest input for the maximum output. Because we have to remember we are ancient bodies living in a very strange, very modern environment. The loss of vitality usually comes from a mismatch between our genetics and our lifestyle.
Right. So the mission for this deep dive is to bridge that gap for you. We are going to look at the physical foundation, how to move and eat, and then we're going to pivot to the mental foundation, how to rewire the brain and fix your sleep.
And we are going to bust some serious myths along the way. We're challenging the idea that you need a carb load to work out, or that fasting just means starving yourself.
Yeah, let's start with the physical foundation. Because if the hardware isn't working, the software doesn't really matter. Let's talk about movement. I think for most people, exercise basically equals running or lifting weights.
Right, you go for a run or you go to the gym, that's the standard menu.
But our first source, Michael Easter, argues that we have ignored the most fundamental human movement of all. He calls it rucking.
Rucking. Yeah, it sounds intense because it comes from the military, the rucksack. But functionally, it is just walking with weight. And it's fascinating because it sits in this sweet spot that modern fitness has completely missed.
So unpack the physiology of this for us, because I can hear you listening right now thinking, okay, walking is good. I know that. Why does putting a backpack on change anything? Is it just about burning a few more calories?
It's about how you burn them and what it does to the actual structure of the body. When you walk unweighted, the human body is terrifyingly efficient. I mean, we evolved to walk across entire continents on a handful of berries.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. You burn very little fuel doing it because of something called the pendular exchange of energy. Your legs essentially act like pendulums swinging back and forth. But the moment you add load, and we're talking about maybe 20% of your body weight, you break that efficiency curve. You disrupt the pendulum.
So the body has to work a lot harder just to do the basic mechanics of walking.
Significantly harder. The data shows you burn anywhere from 20% to 300% more calories than regular walking, depending on the weight and your speed.
300% is a massive jump. That basically puts it in the realm of running calorie-wise.
It does. But here is the absolute clincher. The injury profile. Running is high impact. Every single step is a collision with the ground, usually at 2 to 3 times your body weight.
Yeah, my knees definitely know that.
Right. And the injury rate for runners is incredibly high. Some statistics say up to 70% of runners get injured annually. But rucking, the injury rate is negligible. It's somewhere around 1%.
Wow.
You get the cardiovascular benefit of a run, you get the caloric burn of a run, but you are moving at a walk.
It sounds like a total cheat code. But what about the structural benefits? Because we aren't just trying to burn calories here, we want to build a durable body. If I put 30 pounds on my back, isn't that inherently bad for my spine or my joints?
That's the common fear. But the research actually suggests the exact opposite. This is where the specific type of load matters. When you put weight on your shoulders, your core instantly has to engage to stabilize your spine. So it's an active core workout the entire time. But more importantly, it improves bone density. We have an absolute epidemic of osteopenia and fragile bones as we age. And the best way to signal to your bones that they need to stay strong is compressive force.
Axial loading, right.
Exactly. Rucking provides that axial loading that basically tells the skeleton, hey, we're still carrying heavy things out here, stay dense.
Which makes perfect evolutionary sense. We didn't evolve to run empty-handed on a treadmill in a climate-controlled room. We have evolved to carry things.
Right. Michael Easter cites this amazing 2004 Harvard study on human evolution that argues carrying was just as essential as running for our survival. We were essentially the Sherpas of the animal kingdom. We carried tools, we carried food, we carried babies.
We are fundamentally designed to bear weight.
Yes, and when we stop doing that, the body degrades.
Okay, so the concept is solid, but let's get practical for a second, because the barrier to entry here feels like it might be equipment. Do I need to buy a tactical vest? Do I need to look like I'm deploying to a war zone just to walk my dog?
No, and please don't be that guy. The beauty of rucking is that it can be completely invisible if you want it to be. You literally just need a backpack. Start with 10 pounds. If you're a beginner, just put a couple of thick books or some water bottles in a sturdy school pack.
And you don't even need to set aside specific workout time for this. Easter had a really extreme example of this in the book.
He did. He was preparing for a 33-day caribou hunt up in the Arctic. Serious backcountry stuff. He needed to be incredibly fit. But instead of living in the gym for hours a day, he just integrated the weight into his normal life.
Yeah, he was doing his vacuuming and his laundry, wearing a 35-pound pack.
And mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
It's the definition of efficiency.
I just love the image of someone aggressively vacuuming the living room in a rucksack. It's absurd, but it's brilliant because it turns dead time into training time.
It really does. There's another great case study in the notes about a woman named Mary. She had a highly sedentary corporate job and really struggled to find time to exercise. She started pacing her office during conference calls, which is a great start on its own, but then she added the weighted pack.
And what happened?
She went from a completely sedentary baseline to hitting 10,000 weighted steps a day, just during her normal work hours.
That is a life-altering change in metabolic rate without ever actually going to the gym.
Exactly. That is the core takeaway here. You don't need a new gym membership, you just need gravity.
So we are moving heavy things. Now let's look at fueling the machine. Topic B brings us to a really controversial one, fasting. It has been a massive buzzword for a decade now.
Oh yeah, intermittent fasting,
Right.
water fasting, you name it.
But our source, Vanessa Spina, suggests that the way most people approach fasting, like water fasting or just dramatically stopping eating, might actually be damaging their vitality in the long run.
It's a classic case of having the right mechanism, but the wrong execution. Traditional fasting creates a calorie deficit, yes, and you will absolutely lose weight on the scale. But Spina points out a very critical flaw.
The starvation response.
Right. When the body senses starvation and there is zero amino acid intake, no protein coming in at all, it panics. It urgently needs amino acids to run vital daily functions. So where does it get them?
It eats your muscles.
Exactly. It cannibalizes its own lean tissue.
Which is the exact opposite of what we want for longevity. Muscle is our metabolic engine. It's like if you burn your furniture to heat the house, eventually you run out of furniture and you're just freezing in an empty room.
That is a perfect analogy, and the data completely backs this up. She highlights a major trial from JAMA Internal Medicine looking at alternate day fasting. The dropout rates were incredibly high because the protocol was just miserable to stick to, but the muscle loss was significant among those who stayed.
They end up skinny fat, right? Lower overall weight, but a higher body fat percentage relative to their new muscle mass.
Yes, their resting metabolic rate drops because they lost the muscle that burns calories at rest.
So how do we actually fix this? How do we get the benefits of fasting? You know, the fat loss, the cellular cleanup without eating our own biceps?
She proposes a protocol called protein-sparing modified fasting. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the concept is beautifully simple. You restrict your calories heavily, taking it down to maybe 700 or 900 calories for the day, but almost all of those calories come from protein.
So we're talking lean chicken breast, egg whites, maybe a high-quality protein shake.
Exactly. You keep fats and carbohydrates at effectively zero for that day. This forces the body to burn its own stored body fat for energy, so you enter ketosis. But because you were flooding the digestive system with maybe 140 to 170 grams of protein, the body has absolutely no reason to break down muscle tissue.
You literally spare the protein.
You spare the muscle. Yeah.
But wait, I have a question about this because I thought the whole point of fasting for longevity was autophagy. That cellular detox process where the body sort of cleans out junk cells. Doesn't eating protein stop autophagy? I've always read that as soon as you eat protein, mTOR activates and the cleanup stops.
That has been the prevailing dogma for years.
Yeah.
But Spina cites a very recent 2025 study that fundamentally challenges this.
Yeah.
It shows that autophagy is primarily triggered by the energy deficit itself, not necessarily just the complete absence of all nutrients.
Oh, wow.
Right. So if you are in a massive calorie deficit, even if you are eating lean protein, you still trigger the cellular cleanup.
That is a huge unlock for people. You get the fat burning, you get the detox, but you don't feel like you are dying of hunger all day because protein is so incredibly satiating.
Exactly.
Mm.
Spina actually used this protocol herself to lose 14 pounds of body fat. She describes the process as effortless because you aren't fighting that gnawing primal hunger that usually breaks people. You are fed, but your fat stores are wide open.
Okay, let's pivot to the other side of the nutrition coin. If you are exercising, say you're doing that rucking we talked about or running, the standard mainstream advice has always been to carbo load. Eat a huge bowl of pasta the night before. Drink the Gatorade during the workout. You need energy.
This is arguably one of the most entrenched dogmas in all of sports nutrition. And Dr. Andrew Koutnik really takes a sledgehammer to it in his research. He did a massive review of over 100 years of data across 160 different trials.
And what did he find? Because surely there's a reason we've been told to eat carbs for energy.
He found that for the vast majority of people, massive carbohydrate loading is totally unnecessary and potentially even detrimental to performance.
But we feel it, don't we? If you are out on a long run and you hit the wall, you physically feel like you have run out of gas in your legs. Isn't that the muscle literally running out of glycogen?
That is exactly what we assumed for decades. But Koutnik's research points to a different mechanism. It suggests that the bonk is actually a neurological safety switch. It's not that your leg muscles are completely empty, it's that your blood glucose has dropped slightly, and the brain panics.
The central governor theory.
Yes. The brain says, hey, I need sugar to survive. I run on glucose. Stop moving the legs so we can conserve whatever sugar is left for me.
So the immense physical fatigue you feel is actually just the brain putting the brakes on the body.
Precisely. It's a protective illusion. So the solution to this isn't to flood the system with 100 grams of liquid sugar, which spikes your insulin and completely shuts down your fat-burning pathways.
Right, because if insulin is high, you can't access body fat.
Exactly. The solution is just to reassure the brain that it's not starving. He calls it the trickle-in method.
Okay, what does a trickle actually look like in practice?
It's shockingly small. He recommends about 10 grams of carbohydrates per hour. That is roughly 1 single teaspoon of sugar, or just a few sips of a sports drink every 20 minutes or so.
That's it. I mean, the standard advice on those energy gel packets is usually 60 to 90 grams of carbs an hour for endurance athletes.
And that is exactly why so many endurance athletes suffer from severe gastrointestinal distress during races. Their stomachs simply cannot handle processing that massive glucose load while they are exercising.
He's just sitting there fermenting.
Right. Koutnik found that with just this tiny 10-gram trickle, athletes saw a 22% performance improvement compared to a placebo. It was just enough to keep the blood glucose stable, keep the brain feeling happy and safe, and let the body keep working off its fat stores.
So we are essentially overdosing on sugar during workouts because we completely misunderstand the biological mechanism. We don't need to completely fill the fuel tank. We just need to keep the low fuel light from coming on the dashboard.
That's a brilliant way to put it, yes.
Now, speaking of things we put in our bodies, we really have to talk about the things we have stopped eating. Topic D in our outline is ancestral nutrition, and specifically organ meats.
This is always the biggest hurdle for people. We live in a very sanitized muscle meat culture today. We eat steak, we eat chicken breast, we eat pork chops.
But nutritionally speaking, those are actually the least interesting parts of the animal, right?
Without a doubt. The organs, the liver, the heart, the kidneys, these are the real nutritional powerhouses. James Berry, the chef we cite in our source notes, calls them Mother Nature's multivitamin.
The nutrient density numbers on these are wild. If you compare a serving of beef liver to an apple or even to a premium piece of sirloin steak, it is not even in the same universe when it comes to vitamin A or B12 or bioavailable iron.
It's the difference between a functional food that just gives you calories and a true superfood. If you view the human body as a complex machine, these organs provide the highly specific lubricants and spare parts, the bioavailable vitamins and minerals that synthetic supplement pills just cannot match.
Because synthetic vitamins are often poorly absorbed,
Yes.
right? You just end up with expensive urine.
Exactly. Organ meats are packaged in the exact biological format that our bodies recognize and know how to assimilate immediately.
But let's be real here for a second. The taste, the texture. There is a deeply ingrained visceral ick factor for modern palates. I really don't think I can convince you listening right now to go home after work and fry up a plate of raw liver and onions.
And James Barry knows that perfectly well. He frankly admits that as a chef, he hated the taste of it too. He really wanted the deep longevity benefits of organ meats for his growing children, but he simply could not stomach cooking or eating the meals.
So what did he do?
He developed a culinary hack, freeze-drying and powdering the organs.
So he basically turned the meat into a spice blend.
Exactly. He created a fine blend of powdered, desiccated organs that acts just like a savory seasoning, and he puts it on literally everything: scrambled eggs, hamburgers, roasted vegetables, even popcorn.
Popcorn, come on.
Popcorn. He swears by it. If the base food is salty and savory, you don't even notice the specific metallic mineral taste of the liver. You just taste a rich umami flavor.
That is actually really clever. It completely bypasses the psychological block we have in the modern world to get that raw ancestral nutrition back into a modern diet without the culinary trauma of chewing on a kidney.
It's brilliant. It makes the optimal choice the easy choice.
Before we leave the physical body altogether, we need to talk about measurement. We are doing all this good stuff. We're rucking, we're doing protein-sparing fasting, we're sneaking liver into our popcorn. But how do we actually know if our internal engine is healthy? The standard annual cholesterol test might not be telling us the whole story.
This is a slightly scary but incredibly vital segment of the deep dive. Dr. Regina Drews and Dr. Carolyn Dean strongly warn us about what they call the hidden metrics of health.
Because we rely so heavily on standard lipid panels, right? If our LDL cholesterol is low, our doctor gives us a high five, and we think we are perfectly safe.
We do. But there's a really sobering story in the research notes about a 60-year-old patient. This guy was an avid athlete, had a perfect clean diet. His standard lab results looked pristine. His doctor told him he was the picture of health. And then out of nowhere, he had a massive widowmaker heart attack.
How does that even happen if all the blood work is perfect?
Because standard lab tests generally only measure the content of the blood flowing through the pipes, not the actual physical condition of the pipes themselves. Dr. Drews highly recommends a test called the coronary artery calcium score, or the CAC score.
What exactly is that?
It's a very quick, non-invasive CT scan of your heart that specifically looks for calcified plaque embedded deep in the walls of the arteries. It physically shows you the accumulated history of vascular inflammation.
So it's kind of like looking at the rings of a tree to see its history versus just looking at the bark on the outside today. It shows you what has been happening under the surface for the last 20 years.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
Yeah.
If you have a high CAC score, your vascular age is old, even if your chronological age is young. And Dr. Drews makes a great point that your vascular health essentially sets the interest rate on your overall aging.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning if your blood vessels are stiff and inflamed, every single organ in your body receives less oxygen and less nutrients, so everything ages faster.
Wow. And this issue of calcification connects directly to our mineral balance too, right? Dr. Carolyn Dean talks extensively about the calcium trap.
Yes, this is so important. We are constantly told, especially women, to take heavy calcium supplements for strong bones to prevent osteoporosis. But Dr. Dean warns that taking calcium blindly without balancing it with magnesium and vitamin C is incredibly dangerous.
Why is that? I thought bones were literally made of calcium.
They are, but think of a bone like a reinforced concrete pillar. Calcium is the cement powder. It's rigid. But you absolutely need rebar flexible steel rods inside the concrete to give it tensile structure so it doesn't just shatter under pressure. The rebar in your bone is the soft tissue collagen matrix.
And you need magnesium to build that collagen matrix.
Correct. You need magnesium and vitamin C. If you dump massive amounts of calcium into a body that is deficient in magnesium, the calcium literally has nowhere to go. It can't integrate into the bone without that matrix.
So where does it go?
It precipitates out into the soft tissues of your body. It calcifies your arteries. It causes kidney stones. It hardens your joints.
So by blindly trying to help our bones with cheap calcium supplements, we might actually be hardening our own hearts and causing the exact plaque the CAC scan is looking for.
Exactly. It is a crucial distinction. Health isn't just about taking the right nutrient. It is entirely about the balance and synergy of those nutrients. Vitality is always an active balance.
Okay. We have built a really robust physical foundation here. We know to move heavy things, we know how to fast without losing muscle, and we are checking our actual vascular age. But as we said right at the beginning of the show, you cannot out-diet a stressed-out subconscious mind.
No, you really can't. The body always listens to the mind.
Yeah. So let's go upstairs. Topic F in our deep dive is rewiring attachment wounds. We are moving from biology to psychological programming.
And Thais Gibson is our lead expert here. She drops a quote early in her work that really stops you in your tracks. She says, you cannot outwill your subconscious mind.
Which I think we have all felt on a very personal level. New Year's resolutions are the absolute perfect example of this. Consciously on January 1st, we really want to change. We want to stop drinking, or we want to stop procrastinating or eat better. But by February, we have completely failed. Why does that happen?
Because the conscious mind is just the tiny visible tip of the iceberg. Your conscious mind processes roughly 40 bits of information per second.
Okay.
Your subconscious mind. It processes 40 million bits of information per second.
That is a staggering difference.
It is the massive mountain underneath the water. If your subconscious is running an invisible program from your childhood that says, I am unsafe or I am not good enough, no amount of conscious 40-bit willpower is ever going to override that 40 million bit processor indefinitely. Eventually the willpower battery drains and the subconscious takes the wheel again.
Thais Gibson has a really intense personal stake in this too, right? She overcame a very serious addiction using these principles.
She did. She struggled for years with a severe opioid addiction. She wanted to stop. She tried to stop consciously. But her deep subconscious programming, which was likely built on stories about needing to numb emotional pain or feeling fundamentally unworthy of a happy life, was driving the bus. She finally realized she had to hack the driver.
So what is the actual protocol here? How do you rewrite deep code that was probably written when you were 5 or 6 years old?
It all starts with identification. You have to catch the specific core wound. Let's say your recurring subconscious thought is, I am helpless. You sit down and you physically write out the exact opposite belief. I am capable, but, and this is the vital part, you cannot just look in the mirror and say it. The brain needs actual data. It needs evidence. You had to essentially become a defense lawyer for this new belief.
So you are building a case file.
Yes. You comb through your life and you find 10 specific, undeniable memories that prove the new belief. I was capable when I graduated college. I was capable when I fixed that flat tire in the rain. I was capable when I navigated that tough conversation at work. You are forcing the brain to look at hard data it has been actively ignoring for years.
And then comes the repetition part.
The repetition, yes, but specifically timed repetition. She advises recording your own voice, reading these specific proofs aloud. And then you listen to that recording for 21 days straight.
Why 21 days?
That's generally the biological window for neuroplasticity to start forming new neural pathways. But here is the absolute key to the whole thing. You must listen to it when your brain is in an alpha wave state.
Explain that for us. When exactly are we in an alpha state?
Alpha is that heavy, groggy twilight state right when you are first waking up in the morning, or right before you drift off to sleep at night, or right after a really deep meditation.
Why does the brainwave state matter so much?
Because in an alpha state, the critical factor of your mind, basically the skeptical guard standing at the gate of your subconscious, is off duty. The subconscious is highly suggestible in alpha. If you try to do these affirmations in the middle of the day while you're chugging coffee and stressing over emails, your brain is in high beta wave mode, and it will just reject the positive statements completely.
It's like trying to run a massive software update while the computer is in the middle of rendering a video. It won't work. You have to reboot the machine to install the update.
That is exactly it. And the statistics from her actual clinical programs are just staggering. They surveyed 60,000 participants and found that 99.7% of them successfully rewire their core emotional triggers using this exact method. It is literal neuroplasticity in action.
That honestly gives me a lot of hope. It moves the entire conversation around mental health from just managing bad symptoms to actually going in and fixing the root cause.
It's incredibly empowering.
But of course, even if we completely rewire our own internal triggers, we still have to go out into the world and deal with other people. And nothing triggers our old programming quite like a fight with a spouse or a partner.
Oh, absolutely. Which brings us to conflict resolution. This is topic G in the outline. We have some brilliant insights here from Jay Shetty and Jefferson Fisher. And once again, the overarching theme is simplicity. We tend to drastically overcomplicate our arguments.
I am definitely guilty of this. The classic, you always do this argument. It feels so vindicating to say in the heat of the moment, but it is so destructive.
It is a complete conversation killer. Jefferson Fisher refers to these phrases as absolutes. When you say to your partner, "You never listen to me," their brain instantly stops listening to the actual issue at hand and shifts entirely into defending their character.
Right. They immediately scan their memory bank for the one time they did listen to you last month.
Exactly. And suddenly, you were arguing about a Tuesday 3 weeks ago, instead of the fact that the garbage didn't get taken out today. You're arguing about history, not the problem.
So what is the tactical fix for this?
It's called the XYZ method. It is a very structured communication formula. It goes like this. When you do X, I feel Y. How can we work together to get to Z?
Give us a concrete example of that.
So instead of blowing up and saying, "You are such a slob, you never clean up," which is an absolute, you use the formula. When you leave your dishes on the counter, that's X. I feel ignored and overwhelmed. That's Y. Can we agree to just load the dishwasher before we go up to bed? That's Z.
It sounds a little clinical, almost like HR speak, but it completely removes the venom from the interaction. It focuses strictly on the specific behavior and not the person's fundamental soul.
Exactly. But to even get your brain to a point where you are calm enough to use that formula, Fisher suggests a very specific physiological trick. He calls it the conversation breath.
Is this just taking a deep sigh before you yell?
Not a sigh, no. It's a silent double inhale through the nose. Sniff, sniff. It sounds like you are just pausing to gather your thoughts.
But what is it doing biologically?
That rapid double inhale pops open the tiny alveoli sacs deep in your lungs and rapidly offloads a huge amount of carbon dioxide. It creates an immediate cooling calm in the autonomic nervous system.
It prevents the physiological flooding. You know that horrible moment where the red mist descends over your eyes and you say something incredibly mean that you can never take back?
Exactly. It forces your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, analytical part of your brain, to stay online. It literally buys you the 3 seconds of clarity you need to choose the XYZ method instead of throwing a verbal grenade.
And Jay Shetty adds a really profound layer to this strictly regarding mindset. He talks a lot about his marriage to his wife, Roddy. He calls his philosophy accepting influence.
This is a beautiful concept. He realized that he spent the entire early part of his marriage secretly trying to fix his wife, trying to make her more rigidly organized, trying to make her more like him. But eventually he realized it was causing constant friction, and he flipped the script completely. He decided to intentionally learn from her natural chaos.
So instead of fighting it, he leaned into it.
Right. She taught him how to have spontaneity and joy. And in return, he gently taught her how to have focus and structure.
It stops being a zero-sum power struggle of who is right and who is wrong, and it starts being a genuine resource exchange. It's like saying, I have this specific skill set, you have that specific skill set, let's trade and make a better team.
It requires a tremendous amount of ego setting aside and humility.
Yeah.
But it is the absolute bedrock of a vital, enduring relationship.
Okay, we are heading into the home stretch here. We have optimized the physical body, we have hacked the subconscious code, we have improved how we talk to our partners, but we are attempting to do all of this in a modern digital environment that is actively hostile to our peace of mind.
Oh, it is a war zone out there for our attention.
We absolutely need to talk about the modern brain versus the world.
We are dealing daily with an evolutionary glitch that Amanda Montell calls the recency illusion. Our primitive brains are hardwired to prioritize completely new information over old information.
Which makes sense in a jungle environment, right?
Exactly. In the wild, a fresh footprint in the mud or a snapped twig nearby was quite literally a matter of life and death. The absolute most recent data was always the most important data for survival.
But on the modern internet, recent just means whatever happens to be at the very top of the algorithmic feed.
Right. And our brains cannot tell the difference. Montell tells a really revealing story about herself spiraling into a panic over a mean comment she got on social media. She saw the notification, and her ancient brain immediately treated it like a snake in the grass, a massive, imminent threat. She physically panicked. She thought this one comment was going to ruin her entire career.
And what actually happened?
She finally forced herself to take a breath and look closer at the data. The comment was actually 5 days old. Absolutely no one had liked it or replied to it. It was completely buried in the feed.
It was just a digital pixel on a screen, not a snake in the grass.
Exactly. But because she had just seen it in that very moment, the recency illusion gave it maximum life or death weight in her nervous system, We're constantly flooded all day long with new information that is actually completely irrelevant to our physical survival, but our brain treats every single ping as a threat. It keeps our cortisol stress hormones permanently spiked.
So how do we actually break that illusion? Because we can't all just throw our smartphones into the ocean and go live in the woods. How do we tell the primitive brain, hey, this email is not a tiger, it is not a threat?
You have to intentionally sever the input feed. Montel prescribes something she calls raw walks.
This circles perfectly back to the rucking we discussed in part 1, but this is really about what you don't bring with you on the walk.
Exactly. No smartphone, no Apple Watch, no Spotify music, and ironically, no educational podcasts.
Just silence.
Just you and the ambient environment. It sounds incredibly boring to a modern brain, but that intense boredom is actually the medicine. It forcibly recalibrates your baseline dopamine levels. It teaches the hyperactive brain that it is totally safe to just exist without constant novelty.
And that profound lack of stimulation leads us perfectly into our final and arguably most important topic of the whole deep dive, sleep. Or rather, why none of us can seem to get any sleep anymore, the science of rumination.
This is the big one. Dr. Meredith Broderick is a leading sleep specialist, and she identifies the absolute #1 enemy of modern sleep. It's the racing mind. The tired but wired phenomenon. You hit the pillow, you're physically exhausted to your bones, and suddenly your brain decides it is the perfect time to painfully replay an awkward conversation you had in an elevator 3 years ago.
Why does it do that? It honestly feels like the brain is maliciously sabotaging us.
It's not sabotage at all. It is simply a backlog of work. We have a specific network in the brain called the default mode network. Its entire biological job is to process short-term memories, emotionally make sense of the events of the day, and do all the long-term memory maintenance filing.
Okay, but what's the catch?
The catch is that the default mode network only powers on when we are not actively focused on a specific task.
But in the modern world, we are always focused on a task.
Exactly. From the second we wake up, we are looking at a screen. We listen to dense audiobooks on our morning commute. We furiously answer work emails while we are standing in the elevator. We watch 2 hours of Netflix while we eat our dinner. We give the default mode network absolutely zero blank time during the waking day to do its job.
So when is the very first time in a 24-hour cycle that you are finally lying in the dark alone with your own thoughts and no inputs?
When the lights finally go out at 11 p.m.
And so the brain says, finally, he's finally stopped feeding me new data. Time to start aggressively filing all these unprocessed emotions from the last 14 hours.
And that rush of activity is the racing mind keeping you awake. It is literally just the backlog of emotional processing that you deliberately avoided doing at 2 in the afternoon.
That is a wildly profound reframing of the problem.
Yeah.
Insomnia isn't actually a nighttime problem at all. It is a daytime scheduling problem.
Precisely. You didn't do the work during the day, so your brain is forcing you to do the work at night.
So the fix isn't necessarily reaching for a melatonin gummy or a sleeping pill. The fix is actual structured boredom.
Dr. Broderick highly prescribes a practice called scheduled worry time. It sounds a little funny, but clinically it works wonders. You deliberately sit down at, say, 4 or 5 p.m., preferably before the sun goes down, with just a blank pen and paper, and you just let yourself think. You let the brain worry about the mortgage. You emotionally process the annoying thing your boss said. You manually do the mental filing while the sun is still up.
You clear the mental desk so you can actually go home in peace.
Yes. Her clinical patients see massive quantifiable improvement in their deep sleep architecture just by taking that 15-minute raw walk every afternoon or having that dedicated worry time. You simply have to respect the brain's biological need for digestion time. You wouldn't shove food into your mouth for 16 hours straight and expect your stomach to feel perfectly fine, right?
No, you'd be incredibly sick.
But we enthusiastically feed our brains high-density digital information for 16 hours straight. And then we lay in bed and wonder why we're so mentally nauseous.
Mental digestion. I absolutely love that term. So let's bring this all together to close out. We have covered a truly massive amount of ground here today. We've gone all the way from the biomechanics of carrying weight to the alpha wave states of the deep subconscious. For you looking at all this research, what is the grand through line?
The through line is simply that we are ancient evolutionary beings. We are fundamentally designed by nature to carry heavy weight, to eat incredibly nutrient-dense whole foods, to be deeply connected to a local tribe, and crucially, to have long, uninterrupted periods of silence and boredom. Modern comfort has systematically engineered every single one of those things out of our daily lives. The path back to true vitality isn't about adding more complex biohacks or buying more expensive tech products. It is entirely about intentionally adding those primitive foundations back in.
And doing it in small, minimum effective doses so it's sustainable. You do not need to become a Zen monk or an Olympic athlete to feel better. Let's quickly recap the checklist for you listening so you have actionable takeaways.
Right. Number 1, Ruck. Put 10 pounds of books in a backpack and just go for a walk. It builds bone density and burns fat with almost zero injury risk. Number 2, protein spare. If you are fasting to cut body fat, keep your protein intake high so you save your metabolic engine. Number 3, trickle carbs. If you're doing endurance exercise, you likely only need about 10 grams of sugar an hour to keep the brain's central governor happy. Number 4, eat organs. Or if you can't stomach it, hide them in your popcorn. Just get those bioavailable vitamins somehow. Number 5, check the pipes. Ask your doctor for a CAC score scan. Don't blindly trust a standard cholesterol panel to tell the whole story. Number 6, rewire. Use the groggy alpha state right before sleep to overwrite your subconscious emotional triggers. Number 7, breathe. Use the XYZ method and that double inhale sniff to navigate conflicts without blowing up. And finally, number 8, be bored. Take a raw walk with no phone. Let your brain actively digest the day so you can actually sleep peacefully at night.
It is a profound but simple toolkit for just being a healthy human being. I want to leave you with a final thought based on my very last point about sleep and digestion. We spend literally billions of dollars globally every year on supplements, magnesium, vitamin packs, protein powders, exotic adaptogens. We intensely obsess over every single thing we put into our physical bodies. But if we actually viewed our mental processing time, our daily daydreaming, our intentional boredom as being just as biologically essential to our long-term survival as our physical nutrition, how drastically would we immediately change our daily schedules? Perhaps structured boredom is actually the most underrated health supplement of all.
I couldn't agree more. It's the one thing you absolutely cannot buy online, but it is the one thing we all desperately need right now.
Thanks for diving in depth with us today. Go take a raw walk, maybe put a heavy backpack on while you do it, and we will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.